the hell has happened to the New York Yankees? Just coming off of a 13-game winning streak, they have now lost 10 of their last 12. They just got swept in 4 games by the Toronto Blue Jays, their first time being swept at home in over 18 years, and they lost a series to the Baltimore Orioles directly after it looked like they could not be beat. Now, I understand that this season has been a total roller coaster for the New York Yankees, quite literally. I mean, you take a look at their season as a whole. Their first 15 games, they went 5-10. Their next 32, 23-9. Their next 18, 5-13. Their next 9, 7-2. Their next 9, again, 1-8. Their next 46, they won 35-11. So for 46 games, they were the best team in baseball. And now they have lost 10 of their last 12. I've never seen anything like this. And it's unbelievable because in spring training, this was the year for the Yankees. You take a look at what happened in this division last year and over the offseason. The Rays were obviously very, very, very good last year. But what did they do? They lose Charlie Morton. They trade Blake Snell. Earlier in this year, they traded away Willie Adames. So on paper, it was the Yankees' turn to take over Tampa and win this division handedly. Now Tampa Bay is walking to the division title without any interruption. That itself is a failure. The fact that Tampa Bay, a bunch of people assumed that they were rebuilding or reloading, whatever you want to call it, and you are that much worse? Now the Red Sox have obviously been a bit of a surprise this year, but come on, you can't beat Boston? You can't be ahead of Boston in the standings? This is the 5th year where the Yankees have been a legitimately good team, starting from 2017. And I want to go back to that year because that was obviously Joe Girardi's last year. And Joe Girardi took a rebuilding / reloading Yankee team to Game 7 of the American League Championship Series against a team that ran the biggest cheating scandal in all of sports history, practically. So what did the New York Yankees decide to do? They did not think that Joe Girardi could get them over the hump, and they brought in Aaron Boone. Now, I think blaming the manager for everything is a little tiresome. I think it's pointless. I think it's an excuse for fans to act like they know everything about baseball when the closer blows a game and they say Boone has to be fired. I can have an entirely different recording on why blaming Aaron Boone for everything is stupid, but I'm not going to get into that. The fact of the matter is, the New York Yankees, in a team that proved itself to be good and proved itself to be championship caliber in 2017, the Yankees took a flyer on a guy that no one expected to be a manager heading into that year. They thought that Aaron Boone, with no managerial experience or coaching experience, would take them over the hump. And since 2018, they have literally gone backwards. Now, I think that this team at times plays hard for Aaron Boone. I think that Aaron Boone is obviously doing a great job in the clubhouse because we've seen this team fight back from slumps and times where it looked like they would never be able to hit the ball again. When they had their 46 games, when they went 35-11, I was giving Aaron Boone a lot of credit because they simply could have rolled over and died and tanked on the season. They did not do that. So you have to give Aaron Boone credit where it's due. But the simple fact is that without a World Series appearance, this Yankees season is a failure. An appearance. I'm not even talking about winning the World Series because the Dodgers are still very good. The Padres, we all saw what they did in the offseason. The Brewers are very good. Even though they won 13 games in a row, even though they were at one point the hottest team in baseball, the best team in baseball for about a month and a half, it's a failure if they don't make it to the World Series. And right now, they have choked a 5.5 game lead. They lead that second wildcard spot by just 1/2 of a game. So since Aaron Boone has been here, they've gone backwards. The furthest that they have gone since 2018 is Game 6 of the ALCS. And they followed that up with an ALDS exit against a division rival, and they're following that up with possibly choking away a postseason spot. So what grounds are there to bring Aaron Boone back? There are none. You thought that Aaron Boone was going to take you to a World Series within the 4 years of his contract. And they have not reached the same point that Joe Girardi did the same year that he got fired. That is enough to let go of Aaron Boone after this season if they don't make it to the World Series. And you know what? I'm not counting the Yankees out just yet because we've seen what this team can do. We've seen this team get incredibly, incredibly hot. And you know what? If it turns out that they have a 46-game stretch of being hot, that's pretty good timing because they would be playing in October very hot. But again, it just looks like this team will never win a game. And they've performed well against Tampa. The Yankees have been pretty good against 500 or above teams all season long. There are a couple of reasons why they're so behind in the AL East standings. That's because the offense failed them in the first 2 months of the season. The bullpen failed them in late June and early July. But you know what else they haven't been able to do? They're not beating teams that they should be beating. They got swept in Detroit. They just lost 2 out of 3 at home to the Orioles. They're 9-7 against Baltimore this year. Tampa is 18-1. Now, going 18-1 against one team is pretty miraculous, but 9-7 against the worst team in baseball? That's unacceptable. And the Yankees should be ashamed of themselves. Now, Aaron Judge apparently said something in the clubhouse last night. Someone better have, because they are a bad team again. And it's so hard to evaluate them because, like I said, it would not surprise me if they went on a stretch where they won 9 of their next 12 games or something like that. But are they? And when they do get hot again, will it be too late? Because Toronto is very good. They have figured out their pitching, they have figured out their bullpen, and their offense is incredible. The Yankees are not catching up to Tampa, and we'll see if the Yankees can climb back ahead of Boston. It's been a disaster of a season for the Yankees. And right now, it would be a failure. With the way that things are going right now, this season is a failure. Maybe I had way too high of expectations, and I understand that it's not 1998 anymore, where it's so easy to make the World Series if you're the Yankees. Because every other team in the sport now has incredible assets in their front office and better scouting departments. Every front office has geniuses where they know how to find the right players now. It wasn't like that when the Yankees had a dynasty in the late 90s. Baseball has become so much different. Front offices have gotten so much smarter. So maybe my expectations of a World Series appearance were a little irrational, but when you make the ALCS twice in 4 years, and what have the Yankees done since the 2017 offseason? On paper, they have gotten better every year. What do? They acquired Giancarlo Stanton in 2018, the reigning MVP. And in 2018, he had 38 home runs and 100 RBIs. 2019, they took a flyer on DJ LeMahieu, who became an MVP candidate that year and in 2020. Heading into the 2020 season, they get Garrett Cole. So they get one of the best sluggers the game has ever seen. They get DJ LeMahieu, who became an MVP candidate, who this year has been probably their biggest disappointment. And they get, in my opinion, the second best pitcher on planet Earth, who's probably going to win the Cy Young Award this year. 3 insane acquisitions that we look at this roster, and you see those 3 added to that 2017 team that was still kind of reloading, and they can't touch what they did in 2017. That's why this season, without a World Series appearance, is a failure. And on top of that, Brian Cashman doubled down. Now, I understand that rebuilding this team is difficult because they have Stanton for another 7 years. They have Garrett Cole for another 8 years. They have DJ LeMahieu for another 5 years after this. They have Aaron Hicks under contract. They have a lot of long contracts that they simply just can't get rid of. But Brian Cashman took a risk, and he said, we're going to get Joey Gallo, who has been a disappointment. We are going to get Anthony Rizzo at the trade deadline because we can win the World Series. That's what he said. 2016, he did not take that risk. Now, it was a lot easier because they had Chapman on an expiring contract. They had Carlos Beltran on an expiring contract. They had Andrew Miller. That was the big selling point right there. But even Andrew Miller had 2 years left on his deal at that point. They traded Brian McCann in the offseason, who only had 1 more year on his deal. It was easier to rebuild in 2016 because they had young prospects on the come up. That's another aspect of this team also. Their top prospects, the Anthony Volpes, the Austin Wellses, the Jason Dominguez's, they're 19 years old, 20 years old in A-ball. There's no offensive stud knocking on the door at AAA like there was with Gleyber Torres, another disappointment. Like there was with Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge. There's no one in AAA who can provide a season-long spark. Andrew Velasquez, awesome story. He's not good. Why Tyler Wade has not played is beyond me. Tyler Wade was finally getting consistent at-bats. He was hitting 400 over a stretch of 3 weeks at one point. And now he's not playing? A plus defender at just about every position you put him in? And he can't find a starting lineup out of nowhere? Another thing that Brian Cashman did, he said, thanks but no thanks to Masahiro Tanaka, a proven pitcher. And I know a bunch of people were saying, well, his elbow is eventually going to give out. If the elbow didn't give out in 2020, it wasn't going to give out. And Tanaka's doing just fine in Japan. He took on Corey Kluber, who got hurt, was looking very good before he got hurt, to Cashman's credit. Same with Jamison Tyone, looked very good for about a 10-start stretch. And now, A, he's hurt. B, he struggled in his last 4 or 5 starts. Now, maybe the injury had something to do with that. We have no idea how long that Tyone was hurt for. But Brian Cashman has been revamping and reloading this roster for much too long now. And I think Brian Cashman is an awesome executive. I do. He found Gio Urshela. He found Luke Voigt. But one thing he hasn't been able to do is produce pitching from the farm system. Look at Davey Garcia. Now, Jordan Montgomery, I'm a big fan of, so I give the Yankees brass some credit for that. But that's 1 out of how many? Luis Severino, always hurt. I don't think the Yankees can predict that, but that's a blemish on the resume. So how much longer can this team go with Brian Cashman? Now, I'm not calling for Cashman to lose his job because I can't think of anyone available aside from Theo Epstein who I would rather have. But I don't think that Theo Epstein would come to the Yankees at all. It's been much too long. This season has been a nightmare. If they were even a game ahead of Tampa heading into September, it would be pretty concerning because this was the year where they were supposed to run away with the American League East. They were the heavy favorites to win the American League in spring training. It was Dodgers-Yankees who was going to win. That was the worldwide spring training prediction from just about everybody. And now the Yankees, after tonight, could be out of a postseason spot on September 10th. We haven't seen that since 2016. And that was a bad team. This team is loaded with talent, and they have had a lot of disappointments on this roster. Like I said, DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Clint Frazier before he got hurt. Gio Urshela is not putting up the same numbers that he used to. I have no idea if that's coaching. I have no idea if that's players just showing their true colors. But no matter what it is, something has to be figured out. And now you look at the Subway Series right now, they're going against a team that can't win either. The Mets got hot for a few games. And by the way, Yankee fans who want to blame everything on Aaron Boone, look at the last two Mets games. Because Luis Rojas has had some bad in-game managerial decisions. And you know what? He's been questionable for about a year and a half. Maybe he got this job a little bit too early, and that had a lot to do with the Astro scandal and Carlos Beltran. But boy, Luis Rojas sometimes is way over his head. He makes Aaron Boone look like Tony La Russa and Joe Torre in the 90s, and Bobby Cox. You take a look at this series, and it wouldn't surprise me if every game was 1-0, because the Yankees don't know how to swing the bat anymore. When they don't hit home runs, they lose. And that's a totally other argument that they are way too strikeout home run. But you know what? So are the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're doing just fine. But the fact of the matter is, if the Yankees are not hitting home runs, they are losing. Luckily for the Yankees, the Mets can't get a hit with runners in scoring position. This series is going to be pretty hard to watch. You have Jordan Montgomery and Tyler McGill tonight. I think Stroman starts for the Mets on Saturday. I think Sunday's kind of up in the air on both sides because Garrett Cole got hurt on Tuesday, and that was a killer for the Yankees. Garrett Cole, by the time he got hurt, if he had kept at that normal rest period, he would have been slated to start the wild card game on 3-day rest. So that's why the Yankees really needed to beat these bad opponents in Baltimore, in the Mets earlier in the year. They should not be ever swept by Toronto, especially in 4 games. They had to win these games so they can maneuver Garrett Cole so he can start in a wildcard game on regular rest. Now they might be able to do that because Garrett Cole got hurt. At this point, the Yankees need Garrett Cole to start as many games as possible. Now, I like Nestor Cortez, I like Jordan Montgomery, but with Jonathan Loaiziga hurt and Aroldis Chapman not being able to throw a strike, and that's another thing with the Yankees, why is Andrew Heaney in a 4-2 game? Andrew Heaney lets up 2 runs, and the Yankees hit 2 solo home runs in the bottom of the 9th. Andrew Heaney is not good. He should never be in a 2-run game because the Yankees can slug their way to wins. They almost did, but Andrew Heaney blew it again. He had 1 good start against Boston, which surprised everybody, but his ERA is in the high 5s for a reason, because he stinks. Andrew Heaney should not see a ball in a close game. I don't care what the inning is. Now, I understand that they did not have a lot of options at all because you can't throw Aroldis Chapman. Chad Green was your closer on Thursday night, so you couldn't throw him. But I do wonder where Albert Abreu, somebody else. Where is the urgency? On Aaron Boone, on the front office? Now, the front office had urgency at the trade deadline, but Aaron Boone and the front office, they make these lineups together. They make these decisions together. And they thought that putting Andrew Heaney in a 4-2 game in the top of the 9th inning against probably one of the best offenses in all of baseball. I saw Vladimir Guerrero up at the plate. I said, he's going to hit this 900 feet. He didn't go that far, but it went over the wall. And then he allows an RBI double. And I'm watching the football game. And then I see that Sanchez and Voit hit solo home runs. Now, we have no idea what would have happened if anyone else came in the ball game. But those 2 insurance runs against Andrew Heaney, of all people, proved to be quite costly. He's unpitchable. Stop throwing him. He's bad. He's a guaranteed run when he comes into a game. If he sees this Subway Series, I'm going to lose my mind. They don't have a lot of options in this bullpen. Loaiziga's hurt. Chapman stinks. And you know what? If Aroldis Chapman is what he is right now, the Yankees are not going anywhere. They need Aroldis Chapman to be not even excellent. They need him to be somewhat pitchable. And that's another thing, too. What the hell happened to him? First month and a half of the season, first 2 months, he was quite literally unhittable. He had, what, a .57 ERA up until June 10th. He allowed 1 run in like 22 innings. Now he has no idea where the ball is going. We'll see what this team has in this Subway Series, because the Mets are not a superior team by any stretch. Now, we've seen the Mets get hot at times. They just won 5 or 6 in a row at one point. But you know what? They just lost a series to the Miami Marlins. It's pretty clear that when Javier Baez and Michael Conforto were not hitting, when Brendan Nimmo was hurt, they are significantly worse. And they have quite the inferior manager, that's for sure. And the thing is, this series is pretty important for both teams, because the Mets need to make up some ground, and the Yankees need to not fall out of this postseason race. So we can talk about what kind of emotional night that September 11th is going to be like. Both of these teams have to win some ball games. And the problem is, neither of them can hit. If I'm a betting expert, I'm taking the under in just about every game. My prediction is this series is going to be pretty embarrassing for somebody. I don't know who, and hopefully Aaron Judge's words have some meaning to them. They did in late June, they got very hot. As soon as Aaron Judge led that players-only meeting, that offense started to click. The bullpen didn't for a few games, so hopefully Aaron Judge's words mean something. The Mets kind of need something like that too, though. If the Yankees win this series, I think it can be the start of a takeoff. But if they lose this series to a team that's not nearly as good as them, then they are in serious trouble. They already are in trouble. If they win this series, it could be a turnaround. If they lose this series, I question when they will. And that's a very scary thing to say because their upcoming schedule is pretty easy. They have the Orioles, who they can't beat apparently, so we'll see how hard that is for them. They are home against Cleveland. They're home against Texas, who stinks, but then they wrap it up with Boston, Toronto, and Tampa. Oh, they play the Twins. They play the Twins on September 13th. If you lose to the Twins, who you have never lost to in the last 20 years, you got issues. They have 3 against Baltimore, they have 3 against Cleveland, they have 3 against Texas, and 1 against the Twins, 3 against the Mets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They have 13 games against teams that they are so much better than. 7-6. If you go under 500 in these 13 games, you're not making the postseason. That's the fact. 7-6, you are disappointed. 8-5 is somewhat acceptable. I think they need to go 10-3 in their next 13 games. And I honestly think that anything less, they don't make it because they're at Boston, they're at Toronto, they're home against Tampa, but they are under 500 against all of those teams. 6-10 against Boston, who granted they did sweep in the 3-game series. That was when they got hot. Now they're the worst team in baseball again. They just got swept in 4 games by Toronto, and Tampa is a living hell for them. This 13-game stretch for the Yankees is do or die, and hopefully they don't die.